Hello, and welcome to The Brief Insight, your go to podcast for breaking down the latest trends, research, and policies shaping our world. Whether you're passionate about sustainability, global economics, or emerging innovations, this is where we simplify complex ideas to keep you informed and inspired. If you enjoy what you hear, don't forget to like this episode, subscribe to our channel, and share it with anyone looking for insights that matter. We're here every Monday and Friday, so hit that notification bell to stay updated. Your support helps us grow and continue bringing you sharp, relevant content that sparks conversation. Thank you for tuning into The Brief Insight. Now let's dive into today's topic.
Welcome to our deep dive, into this whole idea of technofeudalism. It's a pretty intriguing concept, right? Basically, we're going to be questioning if our digital world is, starting to resemble medieval feudalism with like these tech giants as lords and all of us, just digital serfs.
Yeah, it's a wild comparison, but when you really sort of think about it, there are some interesting parallels.
Yeah, and to kind of get us started, we've got a good mix of sources here. We've got this YouTube discussion with the economist Yanis Varoufakis, who actually coined the term technofeudalism, and then an article from the Madras Courier that delves into the historical parallels, and also an analysis from the Beautiful Truth website, which offers kind of some counterpoints.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how those different perspectives play out.
For sure. And just to kick things off, Varoufakis in this YouTube video, he doesn't hold back at all. He argues that capitalism is like transforming into something new, something potentially worse, which he calls technofeudalism.
Right. And he makes this really bold comparison to feudal lords controlling land, saying that today's, tech giants like Bezos, Musk, and Zuckerberg, they control the digital land of the internet.
It's like instead of physical land, it's the digital space, right? The data, the algorithms, all that.
Yeah, so like the new territories, the new places to, exert power and control.
And Varoufakis even uses an example from his own experience with Amazon. He says their algorithm suggests books that he genuinely wants to buy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it leads him to question, like, do we really have agency in our choices, or are these algorithms kind of subtly manipulating us in ways that we don't even realize?
That question of agency is so crucial. It's like, are we freely engaging with these platforms, or are we being nudged or even exploited?
Totally. And that's where the Madras Courier article kind of dives into this historical context of economic systems and how they evolve over time. They point out that capitalism itself actually had roots in feudalism. So are we witnessing a similar evolution now?
Right, from traditional capitalism to this like digital data-driven techno-feudalism.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like this whole new phase.
And they also highlight that capitalism has always had elements of exploitation and rent-seeking, even while advocating for, free markets.
Okay, so it's always been there kind of lurking in the background.
Yeah, it's like this kind of inherent tension within the system.
So the article suggests that maybe the 2008 financial crisis played a big role in accelerating this shift towards technofeudalism.
Yeah, both the YouTube video and the Madras Courier article really emphasize that.
Interesting.
That the 2008 crisis created this environment where these tech giants could just thrive.
They had like the perfect breeding ground.
Exactly. Government bailouts, low interest rates, all this money flowing into the tech sector.
Wow, so they were basically handed the keys to the kingdom.
In a way, yeah, it definitely gave them a significant advantage.
It makes you wonder, like, if the 2008 crisis hadn't happened, would we even be talking about technofeudalism in the same way?
Right. It's hard to say for sure, but it definitely seems like a turning point.
And then there's this whole issue of data. I mean, we're generating huge amounts of data every day, right? It's become incredibly valuable.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where the academic paper that I brought in for our deep dive comes into play.
Yeah.
It's by Jinky Yan, and it talks about how capitalism constantly seeks new things to commodify, and now it's knowledge and data that are being turned into private property.
Wow, so it's like our thoughts and our actions are being packaged and sold.
In a sense, yeah, it's a bit unsettling.
Jan actually uses the term information feudalism to describe this.
Wow.
And he points to the TRIPS agreement, which is like a global treaty that essentially makes knowledge a tradable commodity. It makes you think about who controls information in this digital age.
Yeah, it raises some really big questions about access and control.
And so if data is the new land, right, are we becoming the digital serfs working the land for these cloud lords?
It's a provocative image.
The Madras Courier highlights how platforms like Amazon and Alibaba, they take huge cuts from transactions, like 30–40%. They call it digital ground rent. which
Sounds awfully feudal, right?
it does, doesn't it? It makes you think about the distribution of wealth and power in this digital economy.
Yeah, and they go on to examine companies like Airbnb and Uber, which don't own physical assets, but profit from connecting service providers and consumers.
So they're not creating the product or providing the service themselves, but they're still reaping the rewards.
Right, and it kind of raises the question, are they exploiting both sides?
And then it brings us back to this idea of cloud serfs. We spend hours on these platforms generating data that fuels their algorithms and their profits.
Yeah.
It's like we become the product.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mind-bending concept.
We're not just passively consuming, we're actively contributing to this system, often without even realizing it.
And it really begs the question, are we in control of our digital lives, or are we becoming increasingly subject to these new power dynamics?
That's the million-dollar question, and I'm really interested to hear what the Beautiful Truth website has to say about it because they offer some different perspectives on this whole debate.
Yeah, they present some counter-arguments to the idea of technofeudalism, and it's important to consider those as well.
Totally. We need to get the full picture.
Absolutely. We need to understand the nuances before we can even begin to address the potential challenges.
Okay, so let's dive into those alternative viewpoints and see how they challenge or refine this idea of technofeudalism as we go forward.
Like, even if technofeudalism isn't like a complete replacement for capitalism, the scale of data collection now is just, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, our phones are tracking our location, smart speakers are maybe listening, and our browsing history is being monitored. It feels like it's everywhere.
And it's constant, too. It's not just when you're actively using these platforms. It feels like you're always being mined for data.
It's like you can't escape.
And this raises some serious concerns about power. If data is the new oil and these tech giants control the data, well, they hold an incredible amount of power.
They're like the new oil baron.
Exactly. And they can influence our choices, shape our perceptions, even predict our behavior. It's kind of creepy when you think about it.
The Beautiful Truth website actually calls algorithms invisible hands,
Oh, that's a good one.
which is a powerful analogy, but it also points to a lack of transparency, right?
Yeah, we often think of algorithms as being these neutral tools, but they're created by humans with their own biases and priorities.
They're not just magically objective.
No. And if the goal is to maximize profit and engagement, well, those algorithms are going to be designed to keep us hooked, even if it's not in our best interest.
It's like they're engineering digital junk food designed to be addictive.
Right. It's all about keeping us coming back for more.
And that brings us back to the question of agency. Are we really in control, or are we just puppets dancing to the tune of these algorithms?
It's a tough one because we do choose which platforms to use and what information to consume. But the design of these platforms and the power of the algorithms, it can really influence our choices.
Yeah, and then you add in the social pressure to be constantly connected, and it's easy to feel like you're losing control.
It's like a constant tug of war between our desire for convenience and connection and this potential for manipulation.
So even if we don't totally buy into this whole techno-feudalism idea, are there still reasons to be concerned about the amount of control these companies have?
Absolutely.
No.
I think awareness is key. We need to become more critical consumers of technology, understand how these platforms are designed, the data they collect, how their algorithms work.
We need to ask the tough questions, right?
Yeah, like who benefits from our engagement? What are the potential downsides of this constant connectivity?
It's like reading the fine print before you sign a contract, right?
Exactly. We can't just blindly accept the terms and conditions of the digital world.
And there seems to be this growing movement pushing for data privacy, ethical algorithms.
Yeah, it's encouraging to see.
Like people are starting to wake up and demand more accountability.
It feels like we're at a crossroads.
Right.
We can either keep going down this path towards what some are calling techno-feudalism, the few powerful companies calling all the shots, or we can try to forge a different path.
One where technology actually serves us, empowers us, connects us in meaningful ways.
Exactly, without exploiting or controlling us.
The Beautiful Truth website actually dives into some potential solutions and areas where we should focus our attention. They talk about data ownership, algorithmic transparency, and the role of government regulation.
Those are all really important pieces of the puzzle.
They raise this crucial point about data ownership. I mean, right now we generate all this data, but we don't really own it.
It's true. It all belongs to the tech companies. It's like we're sharecropping on our own digital land.
That's a great analogy.
So The Beautiful Truth proposes this idea of data cooperatives,
Interesting.
which would be user-owned and controlled entities where individuals could collectively manage and benefit from their data.
Like a digital farmer's market.
Kind of, yeah, where users get to decide who can access their data and how it can be used.
That's pretty cool. It puts the power back in the hands of the people.
But then what about the algorithms? How do we make sure they're not being used against us?
That's a big one.
Well, transparency is key. We need more insight into how these algorithms work, the data they use, how they make decisions. It's like demanding to see the recipe for that digital junk food we were talking about earlier.
We have a right to know what we're consuming and how it might be affecting us, right?
Exactly. And right now, these algorithms often operate in a black box. We have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. But even if we understand how they work, do we as individuals really have the power to change them?
That's a good question.
And that's where government regulation comes in. The Beautiful Truth argues for stronger regulations to protect users from algorithmic bias, discrimination, and manipulation. It's like establishing food safety standards for the digital age.
Making sure the algorithms we're being served are safe for consumption?
Yeah. Exactly. It's a multifaceted approach. We need data ownership, algorithmic transparency, and government regulation all working together to create a more balanced and ethical digital landscape.
It emphasizes that we're not powerless in this whole technological revolution. By understanding the dynamics at play and working together, we can actually shape the future of technology in a way that benefits everyone.
It's empowering to realize that.
It is. It's like we have a voice and a role to play in shaping this digital world, but what are some practical things that people can do to reclaim their digital sovereignty? The Beautiful Truth offers some advice, right?
Yeah, it gives them really concrete actions we can take. First, they encourage us to become more mindful of our data footprint, like what information are we sharing? With whom? Do we really need to be logged into every website and app? It's about being more data savvy.
It's like checking the nutrition labels before you consume that digital content, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they also encourage us to support organizations and initiatives that are advocating for data privacy, ethical algorithms, and a more open and democratic internet.
So putting our money where our mouth is, basically.
Yeah, aligning our actions with our values. And then finally, they emphasize the importance of staying engaged in the conversation. This whole technofeudalism debate is ongoing. And it's crucial to stay informed and speak up about the kind of digital world we want to create.
We need to be active participants, not just passive consumers.
Precisely, we need to understand the issues, engage in the conversation, and make our voices heard. The Beautiful Truth also explores some alternative models for organizing our digital lives, like platform cooperatives.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to ask you about those.
So platform cooperatives are a really interesting alternative to the traditional corporate model. Instead of being owned by investors or shareholders, they're owned and governed by the people who actually use and contribute to the platform, whether they're workers, users, or both.
So it's like a democratization of the platform itself.
Exactly. Imagine a ride-sharing platform that's owned and operated by the drivers, or a social media platform where the users have a say in how it's run and how their data is used.
That sounds amazing. It gives people so much more control over their digital lives.
And it ensures that the benefits are shared more equitably.
Platform cooperatives seem like a real pathway towards a more democratic and just digital economy where the power dynamics are shifted away from a small group of tech giants and towards the broader community.
That's the hope anyway. It's still early days, but it's a really promising model.
This whole deep dive has been incredibly thought-provoking. It's really made me think differently about my relationship with technology. What's your biggest takeaway from all of this?
For me, the key takeaway is that even though the challenges are huge, we're not completely powerless. We have agency, we have a voice, and we have the ability to shape the future of technology. It's up to us to be critical. Consumers demand more transparency and accountability from these tech companies and support initiatives that are promoting a more equitable and just digital world.
It's inspiring to realize that we're not just passive bystanders in this technological revolution. We can be active participants.
We can shape a future where technology serves humanity, not the other way around.
And that's a future worth fighting for. We've been talking about data as like the new currency in this whole digital world, and The Beautiful Truth suggests that data cooperatives could be a way to kind of balance the power. So instead of tech companies owning all our data, we could manage it collectively and benefit from it together. It's a cool idea, but have you actually seen this in action?
Data cooperatives they're still pretty new, but they do represent a pretty big potential shift, in how we think about data. Like instead of just letting big corporations take our data and make money from it, we could have more of a say in how it's used and who gets to benefit.
It's like taking back control of our digital farms, but wouldn't these cooperatives have to be like massive to compete with companies like Google and Amazon? These guys have so many resources.
That's true. Scale is definitely a challenge.
Sure.
But there are already data cooperatives out there that are working well in certain areas like healthcare and agriculture. So those successes show that with the right support, they can be a real alternative to the way things are now,
Yeah.
where companies just take our data.
It's good to know it's not just a theory then. So we talked about data ownership, but what about the algorithms? Those things shape so much of what we see online. The beautiful truth says we need more transparency, but what would that actually look like?
Imagine being able to see like the rules that determine what pops up on your social media or what products they recommend to you. So instead of those algorithms being a total mystery, we could actually see how they work and what data they're using. That way we could hold companies accountable if they're being biased or unfair.
It's like pulling back the curtain on the whole digital wizard show. But even if we can see how they work, would we really have the power to change them?
That's where government regulation could come in. The beautiful truth suggests we need stronger rules, just like we have for things like food safety or consumer protection. So we need regulations to prevent algorithms from being manipulative, biased, or discriminatory. And that would take collaboration between policymakers, deaf people, and the public to figure out ethical guidelines and how to enforce them.
So it's about making sure that technology is used responsibly and for everyone's benefit, not just to make companies richer.
Exactly. It's about finding a good balance between letting innovation happen and protecting people's rights and the good of society. And it's something we all need to be involved in figuring out.
This deep dive has really made me think more carefully about all the stuff I do online and the choices I make. What are some specific things that listeners can do to be more in control of their digital lives?
First, just be aware of your data. Pay attention to what you're sharing online and who you're sharing it with. Do you really need to be logged into every website? Could you switch to some alternatives that are more focused on privacy?
Like being a smart shopper, but for the digital world?
Another thing you can do is support organizations that are fighting for things like data privacy, ethical algorithms, and a more open and fair internet. There are a lot of groups working on these issues, and your support can really help.
So putting our money and our clicks where our values are.
And the last thing is to stay engaged. This is an ongoing conversation. The more we know about how technology works and how it affects us, the better we'll be at creating a digital world that works for everyone.
So it's been a really interesting journey exploring this whole idea of technofeudalism. It raises some big questions about who has power in our digital world and what choices we have as individuals and as a society.
The future of technology isn't set in stone. We're creating it right now with the decisions we make. So if we understand the challenges and talk about them, we can use technology to do good and build a digital world that's both innovative and fair.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive, and keep exploring these issues and being a part of shaping the future of technology. Be informed and be involved.